Deontay Wilder defeats Chris Arreola on an 8th round corner retirement. Arreola's corner pulling him out of the fight, deeming that he was in no position to continue and to save him from further punishment. This was a strange fight. It really was. I thought that Chris Arreola looked like a dead man walking in this fight. He looked like a totally shot fighter with no energy, with no drive, nothing. No strength in his punches. He was literally a shell of himself. Arreola has never been a true top flight fighter. He's been in there with some top fighters before. Vitaly Klitschko, obviously. Adamek, when Adamek was still good. Stavern. But he's never actually been a top fighter himself. Let that be said. And even then, at least back when he fought Klitschko and Stavern, he had energy about him. He had some type of real will and drive. But in this fight, as I say, he was a dead man walking. And I think it was, well, it was a combination of things. One, he's just over the hill anyway. He's not as good as he used to be a few years back. And two, I think that he probably lost too much weight in a short space of time. Because when this fight was announced a few weeks ago, he looked close to 300 pounds to me. And yet he came into this fight under 250 pounds. I think he dropped a hell of a lot of weight in a short space of time, and it left him totally depleted in terms of energy. That's my best guess as to what happened to Chris Arreola, because most people expected Arreola to give it a go, to come out really aggressively, at least for 2-3 rounds. But we didn't get that. Arreola was extremely cautious in the first round. And then when he did come forward throughout the fight, it was only in short spurts. Most of the time he was standing off against Deontay Wilder. And here's why the fight was strange and bizarre. Deontay Wilder had a dead man in front of him. A guy who was just there for the taking. And Wilder couldn't take him out. And, you know, I did think from early on in the fight that Wilder wasn't throwing enough punches. Because anytime he did let his hands go, he had Arreola in trouble pretty quickly. But he, for some reason, just wasn't letting his hands go, particularly his right hand. He eventually dropped what Arreola, I think it was in the 5th, maybe 4th or 5th round, somewhere around there. They weren't really, I think 1 or 2 clean shots got through, and then Wilder got wild, as he tends to do when he gets excited and he gets a guy hurt. That's normally when he gets a bit wild and sloppy with his shots. And Arreola kind of slumped down to the canvas on his knees. Wasn't a particularly heavy knockdown. But after that, in fact, yeah, it was really from that point onwards, Wilder hardly threw the right hand at all. And I did actually notice what appeared to be some type of wound on Wilder's right arm near his elbow. And I thought at the time, is that Arreola's blood? Or is that actually a wound on Wilder's arm? It later transpired it is actually a wound on Wilder's arm. And again, the right hand just wasn't being used by Wilder. The longer the fight went, it seemed like the less right hands he was throwing. And eventually when Arreola's corner pulled him out and the fight was over, they had the post-fight interview, Wilder said that he had actually broken his right hand and torn his muscle in his right arm. I'm assuming this is something that's happened in training camp before the fight. This is not something that has happened during the fight, because how would you know that you've torn your muscle in your arm? I mean, you might know you've broken your hand, but how would you know you've torn your muscle in a fight? I mean, yeah, maybe you would know, but the way he answered is as if these were injuries he was carrying in. At least the torn muscle was an injury he was carrying into the fight. And again, that's certainly the way it would seem, having that type of wound on his arm. So maybe he's had some type of, as David Hay mentioned actually in the telecast, maybe he had some type of motorcycle accident or something like that, which prevented him from punching with the kind of power he normally punches with the right hand and letting it go as frequently as he normally lets it go. So a strange performance, really and truly a poor performance by Deontay Wilder. Under normal circumstances, you would say that was actually a terrible performance by Wilder, because that was not Chris Arreola at anywhere near 100%. He was just there for the taking, and Wilder couldn't take him out. Now, Wilder did show a few things with his left hand. He was snapping a jab out nice and hard at times. there was a moment where he was even hooking off the jab. He was throwing a jab and he threw a hook to the body and came up to the head with a hook, like a double left hook. It was quite impressive. But, you know, overall, it was just an anticlimactic. I mean, not that I expected much from this fight anyway. I mean, when this fight was announced, I said, boy, I'm not expecting much. You know, it's not something I'm particularly looking forward to unless you enjoy seeing fat Mexicans get punched in the face. But still, it was, you expect Wilder, even when he's fighting a guy that's there for the taking, to be more aggressive and more devastating than that. But in this fight, it just, I don't know, it was weird, man. Even Wilder didn't really seem to have the energy that he normally has. When you see him in the Johann Dupar fight and the Stavern fight particularly, he had loads of energy in those fights. He was just, you know, thundering off the punches, just, you know, churning the shots out, fast combinations, vicious shots. In this fight, Wilder looked flat as well. You know, Arreola was extremely flat. He was just a ghost in there. And Wilder, even with one arm, I would expect him to have a little more energy than that. He just looked flat himself. Really, really strange fight. One thing I can say is that if he fought like that against Povetkin, he'd get knocked out. There's no question about that. So we need to find out how extensive this injury he has to his right arm / right hand is, and see him back in the ring. I don't know if the Povetkin fight's going to go ahead. This Povetkin situation seems to be dragging out a long time. There were people claiming that Povetkin had been cleared by the World Anti-Doping Agency, which he absolutely hasn't. And furthermore, it's not the World Anti-Doping Agency conducting the investigation. The World Anti-Doping Agency just set the rules. They were not the ones who tested Povetkin, and they were not the ones who are conducting the investigation. The investigation is being conducted by the WBC and VADA, the Voluntary Anti-Doping Agency or Association, whatever the A stands for. Povetkin tested positive for an amount of meldonium that was under the permitted amount. But if you've actually read the WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency regulations on meldonium, even if you test positive for an amount that's under the legally allowed dose, it automatically triggers an investigation. So that's what's taking place right now, and it triggers an investigation to try and establish when the meldonium was taken, and that's what they're investigating. Because if Povetkin had tested positive for an amount that was over the allowed dosage, he would have been instantly disqualified. There would be no or there'd be a very short investigation anyway. And he would have already, you know, been banned by now. The fact that he tested positive for something that was under the legal amount, that's why this investigation is being drawn out and it's taking so long, because it's obviously not cut and dry the way Povetkin's team are trying to make it out to be. He hasn't been cleared by nobody. All he did was, all Rubinski, Povetkin's promoter, apparently did was write to WADA for clarification on their policy regarding meldonium. But you can go and look at their policy regarding meldonium on their website. I've been there and I've looked at it. I've downloaded the file. You can do it yourself. You know, he was acting as though there's some type of revelation to do with this meldonium. There's no revelation. That's been information that's been available for the public for ages. So we have to find out anyway what VADA and the WBC are going to rule with this Povetkin thing. It's taken a long time, so there's obviously something they're very suspicious about. If Povetkin does get cleared and he is allowed to fight and does get reinstalled as the mandatory, or, well, I believe he's still mandatory at the moment, but there's no movement. But if he does get mandated and given a date to fight Wilder again, Wilder's going to have to fight a hell of a lot better than that to beat Povetkin. That version of Deontay Wilder, no way does he beat Povetkin. But again, he was injured, did seem flat. You know, we need to see what he's like fully healthy. The version of Wilder that fought Johann Dupar, if that fight happened in Alabama, if you take the Wilder who fought Dupar in Alabama and put Povetkin in with him on that night, I would take Wilder to win the fight. So, you know, sometimes to me Wilder looks very impressive. Other times he looks poor. I fought against Eric Molina. He looked terrible. Not even just poor. I thought he looked awful. So I don't know, hit and miss with Wilder sometimes, man. And tonight I think was more of a miss, although at least this time he's got some type of seemingly legitimate excuse in that his right hand / right elbow or arm seems to be injured. So yeah, not really much else to say about the fight. Arreola, he might as well retire. I don't know how much he got paid. I don't know how well off he is from boxing, but you know, there's not really much stock. You know, his stock ain't really worth much right now. Let's put it that way. His market value is not very high after putting in that kind of performance against an injured Deontay Wilder. Yes, it was only short notice, you know, but still, no energy or anything from Arreola. A dead man walking, a weight drained man, and a guy who just looked like he was turning up for a payday, which of course he was. So drop your comments in the comment section below, people. Let me know how you feel about everything I talked about in this video. Let me know what you felt about the fight. Let me know what you felt about Arreola's performance and Wilder's performance and the injury. If he has torn a muscle, that could take a very, very long time to heal. So even if Povetkin does get his mandatory shot, it may get delayed even further now. If Wilder's got some type of tissue damage, some type of torn muscle, oh my gosh, them type of injuries take a long time normally to heal. And as well as a possible broken hand, Wilder might not even fight again this year, depending on how fast they can get him to heal. We'll see. So yeah, let me know how you feel in the comment section below, people. It's your boy Hatman, I'm out.